As I stepped through the shimmering portal, the familiar stench of human desperation and decay assaulted my nostrils. The bustling city streets, teeming with blissfully ignorant mortals, stretched out before me. They had no idea of the dark machinations at play beneath the surface of their mundane lives. I checked the name etched into my mind, seared there by the sibilant whispers of my demonic master. Victor Novak, a corrupt businessman who had made a deal with the forces of darkness years ago, trading his eternal soul for wealth and power. Now, his debt had come due, and I was here to collect. Adjusting the cuffs of my tailored suit, I blended effortlessly into the crowd. To the average passerby, I appeared to be just another well-dressed executive, perhaps a little more imposing than most. Little did they know that beneath this carefully crafted exterior lurked a being of infernal power, a debt collector for the damned. I made my way to Novak's towering corporate headquarters, a gleaming spire of steel and glass that stood as a monument to his ill-gotten success. The building's sleek, modern facade belied the rot and corruption that festered within its walls. As I approached the entrance, I felt a prickling sensation along the back of my neck. Something was amiss. The air thrummed with an unnatural energy, and I caught the faint whiff of brimstone on the breeze. Novak had clearly taken precautions against my kind. I entered the lobby, my footsteps echoing on the polished marble floor. The security guards at the front desk eyed me warily, their hands drifting towards their concealed weapons. They could sense that I was not just another corporate drone. I flashed them a smile, all sharp edges and predatory charm. "Victor Novak, I have an appointment." The guards exchanged a nervous glance before one of them spoke into his earpiece. After a moment, he nodded and gestured towards the elevator bank. "Top floor. Mr. Novak is expecting you." As the elevator doors slid closed, I allowed myself a small smirk. Novak might have been expecting me, but he had no idea what he was truly up against. The elevator rocketed skyward, the numbers on the display climbing rapidly. As it reached the penthouse level, I felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The doors opened, revealing a lavishly appointed reception area, all plush carpets and gleaming hardwood. And there, standing before me, flanked by a pair of hulking black-clad figures, was Victor Novak himself. He was a tall, slim man with a face that might have been handsome if not for the cruelty that lurked behind his eyes. "Eli Turner," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "I've been expecting you." I stepped out of the elevator, my gaze never leaving Novak's. "Then you know why I'm here." Novak's lips curled into a smirk. "Indeed. But I'm afraid I have no intention of honoring my end of the bargain. You see, I've made some powerful friends since I struck that deal, friends who have a vested interest in keeping me alive and well." The black-clad figures at Novak's side shifted, their forms rippling and distorting. I caught a glimpse of twisted, demonic features beneath their human guises. I let out a low chuckle. "You think a couple of low-level demons are going to stop me from claiming what's mine? You have no idea who you're dealing with, Novak." Novak's smirk never wavered. "On the contrary, Mr. Turner, I believe it is you who are outmatched here." With a gesture from Novak, the demons lunged forward, their bodies shifting fully into their true, monstrous forms. I met their charge head-on, hellfire erupting from my fingertips as I prepared to show them the folly of challenging a debt collector of the underworld. The battle was joined, and the penthouse descended into chaos. Demonic blood splattered the walls as I tore through Novak's guardians, my unholy strength more than a match for their pitiful powers. But even as I dispatched the last of the demons, I realized that Novak had used the distraction to flee. The coward had slipped away in the midst of the fighting, no doubt seeking to put as much distance between himself and me as possible. I stood amidst the carnage, my suit torn and splattered with gore. Novak might have escaped for now, but there was nowhere on this earth he could hide from me. I would track him to the ends of the earth if necessary, and drag his soul screaming back to the pits of hell where it belonged. The trail of clues left in Novak's wake led me to the seedier underbelly of the city, a labyrinth of dark alleys and abandoned warehouses where the dregs of humanity congregated. The air hung heavy with the stench of desperation and decay, a fitting backdrop for the hunt I found myself embroiled in. I moved through the shadows like a wraith, my senses attuned to the faint traces of Novak's essence that lingered in the atmosphere. The corrupt businessman had been clever, employing a series of misdirects and false trails to throw me off his scent. But I was not so easily deterred. As I turned a corner, I felt a sudden shift in the energy around me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I caught the faint whiff of ancient magic on the breeze. Someone or something powerful was nearby, and I had a feeling they were connected to Novak's disappearance. I followed the trail of magic to a dilapidated tenement building, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in a patchwork of graffiti. As I approached the entrance, I felt the wards that had been placed around the building, a complex web of arcane energy designed to keep intruders at bay. But I was no mere intruder. With a flick of my wrist, I tore through the wards like tissue paper, the magic dissolving before the infernal power that coursed through my veins. I stepped into the building, my footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As I climbed the creaking stairs to the upper floors, I heard the faint murmur of a voice coming from behind a closed door. I recognized it instantly. Female, with a rich, honeyed quality that set my teeth on edge. I kicked open the door, hellfire dancing around my fingertips as I prepared for another confrontation. But what I found within gave me pause. She was a striking woman, with raven black hair and piercing green eyes that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. I recognized her instantly. Lilith, a powerful witch with a reputation that preceded her. "Eli Turner," she purred, her lips curving into a smile that held no warmth. I wondered when our paths would cross again. I took a step forward, my gaze never leaving Lilith's. "What's your game here, witch? You know as well as I do that Novak's soul belongs to my master." Lilith's smile widened, her eyes glinting with malice. "Novak's soul is just a means to an end, Eli. What I'm really interested in is the artifact he's acquired. An ancient talisman, imbued with the power to hide its bearer from the sight of even the most powerful demons." I felt a cold weight settle in the pit of my stomach. If Novak had indeed obtained such an artifact, it would make my job infinitely more difficult. But I wasn't about to let Lilith see any sign of weakness. "And let me guess," I said, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "You want this artifact for yourself?" Lilith shrugged, her movements fluid and graceful. "What I want is of no concern to you, Eli. But I propose a deal. Help me retrieve the artifact from Novak, and I'll ensure that his soul is delivered to your master, as promised." I hesitated, weighing my options. Trusting Lilith was a risky proposition at best, but if she was right about the artifact, I might not have a choice. "Fine," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "But if you double-cross me, witch, I'll make sure you spend the rest of eternity regretting it." Lilith's laughter filled the room, a sound that chilled me to the bone. "Oh, Eli, you always were such a charmer." Together, Lilith and I set out to track down the artifact, our shared goal temporarily overriding the animosity that had always simmered between us. The trail led us out of the city, to a remote cabin deep in the heart of the woods. As we approached the cabin, I felt a sense of unease wash over me. The air was thick with the stench of dark magic, and I could feel the presence of something ancient and malevolent lurking within the walls. We burst through the door, ready for anything, but what we found inside defied even my darkest expectations. Novak stood in the center of the room, his eyes glazed and his body wreathed in an aura of sickly green energy. Before him, etched into the floor, was a complex ritual circle, pulsing with eldritch power, and there, hovering above the circle, was the artifact we sought. A small, innocuous-looking talisman that thrummed with an energy I had never felt before. Novak's head snapped up as we entered, his face contorting into a rictus grin. "You're too late," he cackled, his voice distorted and inhuman. "The ritual is nearly complete. Soon, my soul will be hidden from the sight of even the great Asmodeus himself." Lilith and I exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between us. We had to stop the ritual, no matter the cost. As we charged forward, the cabin erupted into chaos. Demons summoned by Novak's dark ritual materialized out of thin air, their grotesque forms filling the room with the stench of brimstone and decay. Lilith and I fought back to back, our powers intertwined as we battled the horde of hellspawn. Hellfire and arcane energy crackled through the air, the cabin shaking with the force of our onslaught. But even as we fought, I could feel the ritual nearing its completion. The talisman pulsed with an ever-increasing frequency, its power growing with each passing second. With a final, desperate surge, I lunged forward, my hand closing around the talisman just as the ritual reached its crescendo. The backlash of energy sent me flying across the room, my body slamming into the far wall with a sickening crunch. Through the haze of pain, I saw Novak fleeing, his form dissolving into the shadows as he made his escape. Lilith was at my side in an instant. "The talisman," I croaked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "We have to destroy it." Lilith nodded, her eyes hard with determination. "Leave that to me. You focus on getting back on your feet. We still have a soul to collect." And with that, she was gone. The talisman clutched tightly in her grasp. I struggled to my feet, my body battered and bruised, but my resolve unshaken. Novak might have escaped, but the hunt was far from over. I stood before the abandoned factory, its rusted metal walls and shattered windows a testament to the decay that had long since claimed this part of the city. The air was thick with the stench of dark magic, a palpable miasma that hung heavy over the area like a shroud. Lilith stood at my side, her face an inscrutable mask as she surveyed the scene before us. "He's here," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I can feel his presence and the power of the artifact he stole." I nodded, my senses attuned to the same malevolent energy. Victor Novak had chosen this place for his final stand, and I had no doubt that he had summoned every last bit of demonic power at his disposal to aid him. We entered the factory, picking our way through the debris-strewn hallways with a caution born of long experience. The deeper we ventured, the stronger the aura of dark magic became, until it was almost a physical force pressing down upon us. As we rounded a corner, we found ourselves face to face with a scene straight out of a nightmare. The factory floor had been transformed into a twisted mockery of a demonic summoning chamber, with arcane sigils and eldritch runes etched into every surface. And there, at the center of it all, stood Victor Novak, his eyes blazing with an unholy light, and his body wreathed in an aura of sickly green energy. In his hand, he clutched the artifact, its power pulsing in time with the dark magic that suffused the room. "Welcome, Eli Turner," he said, his voice distorted and inhuman. "I see you've brought the witch with you. How touching. But even her power will not be enough to save you now." I stepped forward, hellfire dancing around my fingertips as I prepared to unleash the full force of my infernal might upon the corrupt businessman. But before I could strike, Lilith's hand shot out, her fingers closing around my wrist in an iron grip. "Wait!" she hissed, her eyes locked on the artifact in Novak's grasp. "We have to be careful. If we destroy the artifact now, we risk unleashing its power upon the world. We need to find a way to contain it first." I hesitated, torn between my desire to claim Novak's soul and the knowledge that Lilith was right. The artifact was too dangerous to be destroyed recklessly. But before we could formulate a plan, Novak made his move. With a gesture, he summoned forth a horde of demonic minions, their grotesque forms materializing out of the shadows to surround us. The battle was joined in earnest, hellfire and dark magic crackling through the air as Lilith and I fought back against the tide of demons. We moved in perfect synchronicity, our powers intertwined as we unleashed a maelstrom of destruction upon our foes. But even as we fought, I could feel the artifact's power growing, feeding off the chaos and destruction that swirled around us. Novak's laughter echoed through the room, a mocking reminder of the true stakes of our battle. With a final, desperate surge, I broke through the line of demons and charged toward Novak, my eyes locked on the artifact in his grasp. But before I could reach him, he raised the artifact high, its power flaring to life in a blinding flash of sickly green light. I felt the energy wash over me, a tidal wave of corrupted power that threatened to tear my very soul asunder. But even as I fell to my knees, I heard Lilith's voice, cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Now, Eli!" she shouted, her own power flaring to life in a blinding aura of arcane energy. "Strike while he's distracted!" With a roar of fury, I surged to my feet, hellfire erupting from my fingertips as I unleashed the full force of my infernal might upon Novak. The artifact in his grasp shattered, its power dissipating like mist in the face of my onslaught. Novak screamed, his body convulsing as the backlash of energy tore through him. I pressed forward, my hand closing around his throat as I lifted him off the ground, my eyes blazing with the fires of hell. "Your soul is mine, Victor Novak," I growled, my voice a guttural snarl. "And now, you will face the consequences of your actions for all eternity." With a final wrenching effort, I tore Novak's soul from his body, the corrupt businessman's form crumpling to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut. I held the soul aloft, a pulsing orb of sickly green energy that writhed and twisted in my grasp. Lilith was at my side in an instant, her face a mask of grim satisfaction. "It's done," she said, her voice tinged with a weariness I had never heard before. "The artifact is destroyed, and Novak's soul is yours." I nodded, my own exhaustion threatening to overwhelm me. But even as I stood there, the soul clutched tightly in my grasp, I knew that my work was far from over. For every soul I claimed, there were a dozen more waiting in the wings, each one a new challenge to be overcome. Such was the life of a debt collector for the damned, an endless cycle of hunting and claiming that would continue until the end of days. But for now, at least, I could rest easy in the knowledge that Victor Novak's debt had been paid in full. And as I stepped through the portal back to the underworld, Novak's soul screaming in my grasp, I knew that my master would be pleased, for I was a debt collector, and my work was never done.